This is Choquette from Power Company of Wyoming and Trans-West Express. Here at the JOLT conference, we've been talking about energy and all of the above energy options, and you have a really cool project in Wyoming that you've been working on, and I thought it was fascinating to hear. I mean, well, first of all, Wyoming's been pretty darn progressive and forward-thinking about how they've used the state in terms of its energy resources and natural resources.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about the project that you've been working on, and just give us a sense of what that is.
Sure. Great question. So I work for two different projects that have a Wyoming and a Colorado nexus. Power Company of Wyoming is developing the Choquette and Sierra Madre wind energy project in Carbon County. As you noted, Wyoming is very all of the above, embracing all different forms of energy, both as the form of minerals and as a non-mineral resource like electricity. And then Trans-West Express is developing the Trans-West Express transmission project, a very large interregional transmission system that would just better connect our Western grid east to west. Mm-hmm. So it's really more of like a backbone system to really strengthen the reliability, the resilience, and the deliverability of electricity across the grid.
So when we, at the first JOLT conference, we talked, I was really impressed with the duration with which it takes to get these things permitted and approved. I mean, I think you were doing some land acquisition. I mean, it's a long time.
Yes.
Can you give us a sense of how long that takes from beginning to end?
Sure. Well, I think as anyone who has done energy development in the West knows, especially linear infrastructure, so all transmission lines, for example, inevitably cross federal land. When you cross federal land, you're required then, as you put in your application, to use federal land. In our case, the majority of the project route is on land that's managed for multiple use by the Bureau of Land Management. So we put in a right-of-way application in 2008, and that began the process of, and again, very typical for projects like this, is developing an environmental impact statement, which looks at all of the environmental impacts of a project, and then also tries to look at what are the ways to best avoid, minimize, and mitigate those impacts. So it is, a long story short, it was a very long process, very typical, again, for not only the Trans-West Express project, but also Rocky Mountain Power has Gateway West, Gateway South. There's another big transmission project in the Southwest called Sunzia. These are multi-year EIS processes. So for Trans-West, it started in 2008. We got the right-of-way grant in 2017. But then, as a condition of the right-of-way grant, you have to satisfy many different conditions, including getting the county permits, the state permits. And so finally, it was by 2023 where we were able to satisfy all of those conditions and be able to get what's called a notice to proceed from the BLM for the construction of the Trans-West Express project.
Isn't that amazing that it takes so long? I mean, and it's important.
It is important.
I mean, I know that the EIS studies are important, so you don't do anything on public land, but it just seems like that the regulatory environment is so almost oppressive in terms of getting a project moving along. Did it feel like that?
It did feel like a very long time. I think when we first started the project, the estimated time at the moment we began was about 5 years to conduct the EIS, and it became an 8-year NEPA, or National Environmental Policy Act process, plus then to satisfy all of those conditions took another 5 years. So I think we're diligent, we're persistent, we're very fortunate with this project to have a very patient investor in the Anschutz Corporation, but these are the kind of issues that lead to why our U.S. Western power grid does not have the interregional transmission that we need. And why the Trans-West Express project will be so important is because it's gone through this process, gone through those hurdles, and added this very critical physical transmission capacity. But it's not for the faint of heart, or as someone in Wyoming once told me, not for the faint of heart or for the faint of wallet.
Yeah, I mean, and really you got to be willing to stick with it. I can't imagine. But so let me just give you what if there had been some special use designation identified? You're on public land for much of the access. You keep referencing multi-use, which is what we always think about BLM, but we have continual boundaries that are drawn, politically driven, whether it's a Wilderness Study Act or a wilderness area. Would that have even further hindered it?
Definitely.
Okay.
So that is certainly something that we, as a project proponent, you don't put in your application to the BLM without doing some really extensive analysis up front. So looking, to propose a route that followed existing transmission where possible, existing utility corridors, existing railroads and highways, and really trying to avoid those special or potential special areas of concern. What is challenging when you're doing these multi-year processes or multi-year project development is that sometimes the areas that were not deemed special when you started, then get such a designation. And so that is really hard to change the course of, say, a linear project where you need to have 100% of the right-of-way, or you don't have that project.
Okay. So when the project in Wyoming is not Choquette, but the other one,
The Transwest transmission.
because that's important. It's
Yes.
linking linking
Yes.
regions, right? So what will that be in the finished product?
In terms of
Megawatts and
Oh,
all
okay.
that.
Yeah. So the Transwest project will ultimately provide 3,000 megawatts of physical transmission capacity. So there are certainly opportunities across the West and across the United States to upgrade existing transmission lines, but there are instances like this where you need to build new physical capacity. That'll link 3 different regions of the West altogether: the Northern Grid, West Connect, and the California ISO. So that ability to really link diverse resources and provide that grid stability overall is really important. It's in a 1,500 megawatt line from central Utah into southern Nevada, what will link into the transmission system that ultimately kind of connects into Hoover Dam.
So as just a person living in that area or wherever I'm going to access, electricity from, what's it mean to me?
So ultimately, think of Transwest as sort of a behind-the-scenes player in the power market. So we're looking to enhance the bulk transmission capacity across the grid. So it's sort of like an interstate highway. If you have an interstate highway that allows traffic to kind of smoothly get on ramps and off ramps, that complements your local county roads and a state highway system, ultimately it allows electricity to flow more freely across the grid. That enhances reliability and resilience. And also we expect it to help lower costs because that will able to keep the costs down by making sure you don't have the congestion and you have adequate electricity supply, better supplied across the West, and take advantage in an era where the Western grid is adding more diverse renewable energy resources. The sun and the wind are blowing at different times in different places. So to be able to link those all together makes the grid ultimately a stronger and more reliable grid.
Okay. So, you spoke, you were the very first speaker of the
Thank
day.
you.
What since then, what have you heard that sort of tweaked your interest or something you didn't know? I mean, you're an expert in energy, so you probably know all of it. But was there anything that a speaker brought to you today that was like, oh?
I think you've just done a great job putting this program together. And again, with that view of having different perspectives and how important it is to look at all of these issues through different lenses. People can have different answers depending on what the lens is that you look through. I was just talking to someone else earlier today about, wind or solar or coal or natural gas. They all can play a role in this integrated energy system where we rely on one thing here and one thing there. And it's really those utilities that are putting all those together that's really important. It's diversifying your portfolio just like you might diversify your diet. Trying different things, putting different things together ultimately makes a better, stronger grid.
Right, and it's more reliable if you have different choices, right?
Different
so one
things
goes
you can
down,
count
something
on.
happens, you can, and it sounds like, and one of the things that impressed me was that our demands are going to go up exponentially. So
Yes.
Roger Pilkey mentioned that, and between AI and data centers, because we need to store all that, data, I guess.
And the presentation about refrigerators, that was really just, or his remarks about
Right.
refrigerators have just something as basic that we all take for granted. Refrigeration, what a demand that causes on our system, and more people are getting more refrigeration. So I thought that was a
and air
really interesting.
conditioning. People that are going to need air conditioning,
Absolutely.
across the globe. So, yeah, it is amazing that you can learn so much in such a short period of time. So I really appreciate you taking some time to share your project and the kind of the capabilities of what's going on. I'm excited about it. I mean, we saw you the first year, asked you back the second year.
Yes, thank you so much.
So I guess we just keep asking you back till it's finished. And
You might be seeing me in a couple more years, but I'd be happy to come back.
yeah. So anyway, thank you for taking the time to chat.
Thank you so much.
You bet.